Good morning, Cycle for Lifers. It's been a while since we created any fresh content. Sorry about that. The tire business this year has really taken the bulk of my time. But today is Thanksgiving as of this filming, 2023. And last week, the old gray ghost had a failure in the radiator. We caught a rock. And a lot of you guys say, oh, stop running that old van, get rid of that old thing. Well, a brand new truck could have caught a rock too. It caught a rock right there. I don't know if you can see it in the lighting with the sunshine behind you. But right up in there, and it's spraying coolant all over the truck. So I discovered it when I was in Cuyahoga Falls, about 60 miles from the house. And the leak's at the top of the radiator, not the bottom. So I went ahead and limped it home by just adding coolant. Stop every 15 miles, fill it back up, keep a good eye on the temperature, make sure it didn't get real hot. You got to watch your temperature gauges, guys. Some of you guys that aren't very mechanical, some of you ladies, no offense, not very mechanical, be careful if you have a hole in your radiator and you're running without coolant. If you're driving, you should see that temperature go up and up and up and up and up. If you're not paying attention and all of a sudden it goes back down again, you think you're cool. You're not cool. It means you lost so much coolant, the sensor is in air. And it won't be long before it steams up and it'll ruin the engine, and then it'll go to hot and you'll say, oh, it's hot. I pulled over when I saw it get hot. It's too late. You melted your engine by then. So when you see the temperature go up real slow, that's because you're losing coolant. And then if it goes back down and gets cold, that's a bad thing. That means you're running empty. So basically what I did to limp it home was just ran it until I saw the needle continuing to go up a little bit normal that it normally would, and then I'd stop. Let everything cool off a little bit, fill the radiator back up to where the hole was at the top where it was leaking. Yes, it was leaking. And then, limped it on home. I had to stop, I think, 4 times in 60 miles. Every 15 miles to do that. So I got her home without burning her up, and I can fix this radiator. I have footage on this channel about taking epoxy and squeezing cores closed and filling the epoxy in all around the cores to repair radiators and reuse them. But the radiator for this van is so cheap. It's like 180 bucks or something. For 180 bucks, guys, I'm just gonna put another new one in it. Yeah, it's a cheap style, but so what? It's an old van. So we're gonna put a radiator in it today, and then why would you ever do a radiator without putting the hoses in? These old hoses are probably 4 years old by now. They're still working. I'll save them as spares in case I have an emergency. All right, guys, the first thing I'm gonna do is drain the coolant out of the system, get it as empty as I can. You're going to have residue in the heater core, and you're going to have residue in the block. That's okay. There's no contamination in there. There's no reason that there's anything wrong with any of this coolant. When I filled it coming back down the road to limp it home, I used 50-50 mixed. I didn't go full concentrate or full water, which you can do to get home. You can do that, but I didn't. I used mixed stuff, so my ratios are correct. My coolant is ratioed properly. I can completely mix whatever's in that heater core and in that block, in the new fan, and be in the new radiator and be fine. So I'm not worried about that, but I want to get it as empty as I can just to work on it. And then I want to rinse all this stuff off. See where all this coolant sprayed all over everything and got everything sticky and nasty and gross. And it will eventually eat paint if you leave it there. So I'm going to put a plastic baggie over the alternator just to keep water out of the windings. And then I'm going to hose this all down and get this all cleaned up while it's dripping the coolant out. And I'll go ahead and pull the lower radiator hose off. I'll just physically pull it off. So there's no way there's anything left in the pump body or the bottom of the radiator other than the very last little bottom core that's below the tank level. You're always going to get a couple drips there no matter what you do. So, all right, I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to get to work cleaning this up, draining this out, and then we'll take the next step. So, where do you drain this radiator from? I could pull, okay, I see that's right there where it comes off the pump. Oh, that wire's getting ready to rub through there. I'm going to insulate that a little better. There used to be a zip tie hanging this down here to keep this up. So apparently that zip tie failed through the years, and my starter cable is, or my positive feedback to the starter is rubbing right on the sway bar there. So we'll have to get that tacked up and taken care of so we don't have a short. Where is the screw to let that bottom radiator go? There's usually a drain also on them. Some kind of a plastic drain that you can, oh, I just smacked my head. There's some kind of a plastic drain fitting usually on these old radiators, but I'm not going to bother with it. I'm just going to pull the hose. I'll have to go from the top down and see if we can see it that way. Yep, we can. See it down there. Take these brand new pretty tools and get them greasy and mucky. Let's break them in, boys. Alright, here we go. So we're gonna we're gonna loosen the lower hose and just pull it. And you're not gonna get the system drained any more than doing that. So it is gonna make a little mess. We're going to clean it up best we can and try to keep, you know, all the little animals and rabbits and little birdies and deer. And I've literally had deer walk through this yard. And I'm going to do everything I can to keep them from drinking all that mess. Alright, I'm going to get the camera off because I'm to a place where I need two hands for this. And we'll get the coolant out and get it rinsed off, and I'll see you then. There's my new hoses. I goofed up and picked up the wrong bottles because I'm a Dinkeldorf. I got some ready to use, do not add water, already mixed, and then I got some concentrate. And but you know, whatever. Just read the label and use it accordingly. You know, when I put that in, I won't mix it. When I put that in, I will. So it's no big deal. Simple mistake. But it's all the green glycol style. You don't want to mix your pink Toyota stuff in there. You know, you want to use your green glycol on these old Chevys. Okay guys, we got the lower radiator pulled, we got the upper radiator on this end pulled. We'll pull the upper back there when I get the doghouse off the van. Next step's going to be cracking these these heater core hoses loose, the reservoir hose loose, and then this old plastic air thing just comes out like that, just sits in there. The transmission line that goes into the stock radiators, I put my own cooler in there for that. I do a little bit of towing and my temperatures were going up, and this is a gauge fitting for transmission temperature. If you look at my other videos, you'll find information on that. This is where I grounded the block out, and this is the resistance feed back to the gauge itself. But as you can see, none of that's using the stock radiator. So if I pull the heater hoses out of the way and then lift the radiator, we should be able to leave the trans lines all intact without unhooking any of that and losing any trans fluid. Alright, so I'm gonna unbolt these, get the shroud out, get the heater hoses off, and I can't hold the camera while I'm doing all that, so I'm going to do all that and then I'll come back. Okay guys, I got the upper radiator holders off of there. I'm going to show them to you because it's real important you make sure you have those rubber pads in there. Okay, these rubber pads rot and they stick to the radiator. I've watched guys throw radiators away with the rubber pads on the top of what they're supposed to be holding down. Okay, then when you put the new one in, if there's no rubber on top of that, it wiggles around and there's no support. And then when it wiggles around and there's no support and the plastic tank joint fails, they want to blame the plastic tank joint because they didn't put it in properly. So make sure that little rubber holder's there. Okay, this cable for the hood latch is going to be a bit of a blockage and a challenge for us. So rather than undo the cable and mess all that cable ending up and risk fracturing those plastic fittings because they're 40 years old and brittle, or 30 years old. I'm just going to unbolt it right here and move the whole assembly. And that way we can save and protect those plastic cable ends and those cables. And you critics will say, oh, well, now you got to readjust the location of the hinge as it goes to the latch because it's got to line up. Well, it's a lot easier to do that without breaking anything and not having to go get parts and having it all work when you're done by just hanging it up out of the way like that. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to rip all that cabling apart and risk having a problem that you can't get your hood to stay down. Years ago, I had a hood on a van let go and come up and smack the windshield, and oh, it's a mess. You don't want that. I actually had that happen to me once. So now that we've taken our 12-volt house battery cable out of the way, we've got all the hoses disconnected, the upper shroud out of the way, the radiator should lift out. Let's see. Okay, there's that drain I was telling you about, that these radiators all have that little plastic drain on them. We didn't use it, we just pulled the lower hose, but it did have one. So I'm going to leave these plugged just to keep weather out because we're not running the trans cooler through the radiator. We're going to leave that plug there. That's not used on this vehicle. We exposed this one because we need that for the heater core hose, and we checked our drain plugs tight, so the radiator is ready to go in. Okay, I got it nice and centered on the lower pads. I don't know how I can get a shot of that with the camera, but I think that's probably about the best I'm going to be able to do with lighting. But you can see the bottom of the radiators in those lower pads, and then we'll get the top ones bolted down. See that pad right there? It goes right over there, just like that. And holds that down right there. Okay. And when they're tightened down, it compresses that rubber that holds that radiator safe and sound off of anything metal, off of anything that can rub into it. Let's get those brackets torqued down. Okay guys, we got the hoses in, we got the radiator in. I had to change the hose for the reservoir, and that's not the right material to use for that hose, so I'll get the right material later, but that's just a band-aid on there for now because the hose I had came out where my finger's at and it was too short. So I got the right stuff, and it's going to get real flexible when it gets hot, so that's why I made it a little bit long so it doesn't crimp over. But I'll get the right material that's made for that. So that's a little band-aid fix for now, just to get it up and running until I can stop by the store. Today's Thanksgiving, they're not open. We're going to zip tie these up to this bracket and just kind of hold them up so they can't get near the pulley. And then here we'll reattach that where that was before. Okay, I started it up a few minutes ago, went inside and did a little tinkle, and it's been running a few minutes. We're at 115 degrees on the radiator and 62 on the upper hose. What does that tell you? Heater hose 130, 128. Oh, I see bubbles moving over here. Sorry, we're running out of daylight, guys. I didn't get started on this project till about 1 o'clock today, and we don't have a lot of pressure on the hose yet, but it's still pretty cool. So the water pump is at 150 degrees long before the thermostat opens. So that gauge should be pretty low. Yeah, it is. It's pretty low. I'll turn the lights on. Maybe that'll help you see it. I don't know if it helps or not in this daylight, but the gauge is way low. It's nowhere near warm yet. So I'm going to turn the camera off because this is the boring part, the waiting. It's going to take probably 7, 8, 10 minutes. So I'll see you in 7 minutes. And the radiator's getting warm enough to where it's starting to exchange. So I saw some air bubbles moving. But heater core hose 160. Radiator still only 130. Upper hose cold, guys. Look, it's only 70 degrees. So thermostats haven't even thought about opening up yet. But we're getting a little temperature on that heater core hose, so that means the motor, or the engine, motors go in RC cars, right? The engine should be heating up. Yeah, see, there it is. All right, we are at the normal operating temperature that this thing used to always run at. Oh, there's air bubbles. I don't know if you caught it in the camera. I just saw another bubble move. That's not good to have that clear hose on there. I won't keep that on there. That hose will degrade very quickly because it's not made for that kind of chemical and that kind of heat. I'm going to replace that as soon as I get one to fit it. But, you know, it's neat for you to see the bubbles moving. Alright, so we're getting decently warm in the engine. The block and the pump are, I'm getting all kind of different readings, probably because I'm hitting moving parts. Yeah, the block says 190 degrees now. So when the block's 190, the heater core is 173, the upper radiator hose still isn't even open yet. It's warming up through osmosis and through temperature, but you know, you see it climbing, but it's not over 185 degrees where it opened, you know, or 170 where it opened. So thermostat still has not opened yet. We're barely over that line. Barely over that line. You see why I put my air filter cover back on. I got all kind of little paraphernalia up there. I got little battery covers, pens, little staples in there, coins. If any of that stuff fell down in a running engine, well, let's not talk about that. All right. 176. 168 on the radiator. Let's see where the pump body's at. Yeah. The bottom of the engine block right at the head near the exhaust manifold is at 200 degrees. The hottest part of any engine is the cylinder head right next to the exhaust and the cylinder right next to the exhaust area, because all the escaped gases go out the exhaust port. The intake sides are cooler because the fuel charge and the air charge coming in is cooler. So the intakes are cold from air coming in, and the exhaust gets hot because it's literally getting all the burning exhaust to go out. So the exhaust side of that head is over 200 degrees. Let's see if we can get a shot of the manifold somewhere. Nah, I can't really get to it. Not safely. The pump's around 185. Yep, there you go. 178, 109, 879. Yeah, this upper hose is climbing in temperature big time. So the thermostat is now open. It's working. All right, guys, that's how you put new radiators in your vans.